Okay, so this is going to be interesting. I've got a bunch of 4K webcams and a bunch of them with gimbals on them, and I want to compare everything. I'm probably the only person dumb enough to do all this and to have all these different cameras that I paid for. But let's start with the newest one that I have, which is the Insta360 Link. Now, this is a brand new camera. Just to show this, like in terms of the comparison of the ObSpot, it is tiny compared to it, which I don't always think is a good thing on a camera. But we're going to go ahead and compare that also to what used to be the king of the hill in terms of 4K webcams, which is the Logitech Brio. I'll also compare it to the Mikoze 4K camera that you can get for about $85. I think that sensor size is king. This one's got about a 2/5 sensor. The other one, the Insta360 Link, has a 1/2-inch sensor, and the ObSpot has a 2/5 sensor as well. And for kicks, we'll go ahead and compare that also to the DJI Pocket 2 camera, which has a 3/5 sensor. Obviously, it can't be used as a webcam, so we'll go ahead and record everything to the micro SD card, just for comparison's sake, and see how all these things do. If you want to see how all these cameras compare, stay tuned. Let's go. Okay, so for all these, I'm going to actually record with the onboard microphone so you get an idea of what those sound like as well. And this is the Insta360 Link. Now, I'm recording at 4K. I'm actually going to edit the entire video in 4K. Note that the intro scene, because I'm using my Sony that doesn't support 4K, is going to be filmed at 1080p. So this will actually sharpen up theoretically with this camera. So these are all the default settings for the Insta360 Link. This is the onboard microphone. It's what the image looks like with, auto brightness, exposure, everything set up. I have zoomed in a little tiny bit just to get my framing right. And I've turned the kind of gimbal automatic functions off. And this is the image that it produces. It's actually pretty amazing given just how tiny that little camera is. So let's move on to the next camera. Okay, so this is the ObSpot Tiny PTZ camera. Again, I'm recording at 4K in this case, and using the built-in microphone. A couple of things that I did do to the camera. Everything is kind of the default settings. I noticed the picture was a little bit fuzzy, so I used manual focus, zoomed in, focused effectively on my eye to make sure it got as crispy and clear of image as possible. And I did have to set the microphone down from 100% to about 70% in this case to try this out, because the microphone was clipping when I had it at 100%. So again, this is the ObSpot Tiny PTZ, the way it looks out of the box, and also the way it sounds. Okay, so this camera, a lot of people would consider the top of the 4K webcam food chain. This is the Logitech Brio. Of course, it doesn't have a gimbal on it, so it's fixed right now with more or less the same framing. This is using the default microphone, the Brio's microphone as well, so you can get an idea of the audio capture. Again, this is a Logitech Brio capturing at 4K 30, and this is the last time you'll see it because I can't compare its gimbal to the other cameras. So this is the Mikoze UC40M. This is the default image out of it. I'm shooting at 2160p or 4K just to see what that looks like with no settings applied to it. It's a little bit on the pink side, I think, by default, but the image quality is quite good. And this is probably the best value camera on the list, or of all the ones that I'm testing here today, at least at $85. Now, the microphone was so terrible in it, and I'll give you a taste of what that sounds like.
You generally don't want to use that microphone.
That I actually switched it to my Shure microphone just so it would sound somewhat audibly acceptable, because the microphones on board from this camera are some of the worst microphones I've tested. So you do not want to be using the ones built in to the camera. So this is the DJI Pocket 2 shooting at 4K 30 with its onboard microphones. Alright, so you just saw all the different camera sensors filming at 4K. Now let's take a look at the ones that have 3-axis gimbals, the Insta360 Link and the ObSpot Tiny PTZ 4K. Alright, so let's move on to the gimbal auto tracking. So I won't be able to test the Mikoze in this case because it's a fixed camera. But the Insta360 will go ahead and do a little bit of head movement back and forth just to see how smooth it goes. It's actually pretty snappy in terms of its motions, but it's doing a good job in terms of framing me in the picture. trying to look at the camera and kind of what the framing looks like at the same time to provide some commentary. This little camera is actually doing a pretty decent job given, again, its size and that it's shooting at 4K, the Insta360 Link. Alright, so now let's try out the gimbal of the OBSBOT Tiny PTZ. So we're going to go ahead and move my head a little bit around just to see how well it tracks me. Alright, so you can see from the OBSBOT Tiny PTZ out of the box with the current gimbal settings, it is a bit of a slower tracking camera. So as I move left to right, it's not quite as snappy as some of the others, but it does a good job in terms of nice, smooth, fluid motions from one side to the other. So those are things that you can tweak a bit in settings on any of these gimbal cameras. But just to give an idea of what the out-of-the-box settings are kind of catered towards, which is, I think, a smoother shot. It doesn't quite hunt you as much as some of the others if your head's in frame. So it's kind of a preference thing, but I do like the smooth and fluid motion of the OBSBOT Tiny PTZ 4K. Okay, so now we're going back to a native 1080p image with my Sony and Camlink capture card. Hopefully better audio than some of the cameras that we just saw. I think in terms of feedback on all of them, the Insta360 Link was probably my favorite of all of them in terms of the image quality, the color balance, what it looked like, what it sounded like, and it's amazingly small in terms of packing all of that power into something that compact. I would say my second favorite one of that bunch was the OBSBOT Tiny PTZ. It had a bit smoother of a gimbal, I think, a bit slower a gimbal, but I think it's more natural in terms of how you would expect a camera op to move the camera. It sounded pretty good and the image quality was pretty good. Then I would say the next one, in terms of just having potential, you have to tweak the image a bit, but the Mikoze 4K camera was probably my third favorite. And then the Logitech, just because it was very yellow, yes, the audio quality was a lot better than the audio quality from the Mikoze camera, but I don't understand why that camera is so hyped and it's so yellow. Hopefully this was helpful and this review really helped you make decisions about the camera purchases that you want to make, maybe even some ideas for the holidays coming up. If you liked it, be sure to hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button. So if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching and we'll see you soon.